Hello and welcome to the BC Training Place, the channel where you not only learn about how Business Central, one of the best ERP systems on the market, works, but also why it works the way it does. Um, I haven't been very regular in posting videos lately, various reasons for that, but I've been following for quite a while the channel of Eric Hugart. If you don't know who he is, then what have you been doing in BC? But long story short, he's a great guy, extremely charismatic. I love watching even some of his videos, which are a little bit too technical for me. I'm a solution architect, as you probably know, and he tends to talk more about developer side of things. But I saw a video he released recently, and I haven't watched the whole thing. I started watching the first few minutes, and the topic is something that's really really close to me. I have my own opinion on it, and I just wanted to do a reaction video on it to see how close he gets to what I'm thinking, and maybe share a few thoughts of my own. So without further ado, here is the video I'm talking about. There will be a link to it in the description. It's called How to Respond to I Need a Report. Question from presumably customers in version 2023 and onward. And if he's talking about what I'm thinking of, then yeah, it's going to be quite exciting. But let's see what Eric has to say.
How to respond to the requirement I need a report in the 2023 version. Hey, I'm Eric, and this video is inspired by a conversation with a coworker a couple of days ago where, you know, a client asked for a report, and a developer chose not to create a report as the answer to the request. And it raises some philosophical questions of what is a report.
I watched the first minute and a half, maybe, so I think I remember what he said here. Although I watched it last week, so it's been a couple of days. But yeah, basically, we've been so trained in a way, you might say, in the BC, and especially those of us who started working with it while it was still called Attain, even before it was called Navision, or even before it was called NAV, and certainly before it was Business Central. Whenever a customer asked for a report, that used to be something you print on paper, or at least are able to print on paper and at least have a print preview of it. So whenever we hear report, we think in the very least either some kind of a print layout of a document which you're gonna send to a customer, or it's some kind of visualization of data that you should be able to print out and present to a manager or something like that. And something we very often forget is that for normal people, the actual business users of an ERP system, what a report actually means is just a visual presentation of data based on which you can see what's going on with the business and then make decisions. It's, in short, it's a decision making tool. So a report first does not have to be printed on paper, certainly not in the age in which we are very eco-friendly and eco-sensitive. But for sure, there are many scenarios where, in fact, not having what we would classically call a print preview design is actually a benefit because it then gives you way more ways to interact. And certainly in the age of BI tools and different kind of analytics tools, we should have learned to know better. But it's interesting to me as well how just a classic response, even for me, my natural response when a customer says, I need a report, as I start thinking, okay, is there a standard report? And if not, can we customize one of the standard ones? Or if not, what kind of report do we need to develop? And it's been only in the last maybe, I want to say 3 to 4 years that I started really listening and thinking about what customers actually mean, and giving them alternatives. And what this developer did is actually precisely what I've been doing lately. Because what used to be a customer said, I need a report, and unless we develop a report for them or give them a standard report, we would say, okay, the system doesn't support us, or we have to do something about it. What I started doing is I started saying, okay, tell me what the report should show you. And then I started just showing them even something as basic as the ability to just open the ledger entries and apply a filter and say, okay, here's your report. And the customers would say, perfect, thanks, that works great. And I remember even way before that, the first time I showed a customer the ability to just save a view, which is the old version before BC, before saving filters, which is kind of the same thing, but it also appeared as a shortcut on your start screen or in the navigation menu. And they would say, perfect, that's the report I want. And that's when it started clicking. Now that I think about it, that was all the way back maybe 7-8 years ago. But anyway, it started clicking slowly in my head that, okay, what I think about as a report is not necessarily what the customer thinks of as a report. So yeah.
In 2023, the problem with people like me, and there are many, but one of them
Same.
is that our brains get hard coded, hardwired into certain neurons are truly connected to others, and and the challenge is that we have something called a report in Business Central. We have an object type called a report. A report prints out on paper on a printer, and that's the way it has been for the last many years. But what is actually a report these days? And I think old timers like me really need to make sure that we consider what is actually the ask, because quite often their ask is to present data in a specific way more than it is to deliver the data on paper.
He's very right, and there's something key he mentioned here that I want to stress on. It's something that I've been trying to teach my colleagues when I do trainings on how to be a better consultant, and especially on interacting with customer and analyzing. And the key thing he mentioned is we need to actually think about what does the customer ask for. Very often when we're talking to a customer, when a customer is asking us for something, our brains immediately start processing and thinking, okay, how am I going to deliver that thing he's asking for? Which is great, it's a great instinct to have working in this field, but there is a built-in problem with it. And I started thinking heavily about it maybe around 7 years ago. I'll save you this whole story, but long story short, people started asking me, and I was put in a situation where I had to describe, okay, what do I actually do, and trying to reflect on when I've done a better project versus when things had gone bad. A trend started occurring to me, and it was that in many regards, being a solution architect, especially for an ERP system, but as a general a solution architect type of consultant, the type of interactions I get with my customers are bizarrely similar to the type of interactions people have when they go to their doctor. So I started describing my job position as a type of a business doctor, and you might be thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? But what I mean is, very often when we go to the doctor, we start telling them things like, okay, it hurts here, or I have this pain there, or I have this discomfort, or whatever. And what a good doctor actually knows is that we're not describing the problem, we're describing the symptoms of the problem. And the problem can be in a completely different area than I'm thinking of. So I'm always reminded when before I first started wearing glasses, and they're not extremely visible here, but what my symptoms were and what I ended up presenting to the doctors was I got headaches. So the first things they started analyzing was, brain problems or anything like that. And it was only the second or third thing they tried to when they eventually investigated and said, okay, it's actually a problem with my eyes, and I just need a pair of glasses, and the headaches went away. And it's very similar with customers. Very often they would come and say, okay, I have, this kind of an issue. And very often, especially when we're in a ERP in type of situation, customer would come and very often they will present a solution to that. They would say, okay, this is what we've been doing in the past. You need to give us the same thing. So like in my case, I would go and say, okay, I know an aspirin used to help, so I should probably get better aspirin or whatever it is. But if you're really smart about it, you can see that very often the solution they're presenting is just battling a symptom, but the actual problem could be something completely different in a completely different area. For example, we've had cases where customers ask us to develop smarter and smarter or crazier and crazier way to handle promotions and block and reserve inventory and whatnot. Where in the first place, the core of the problem was that the sales team was not properly communicating their forecasts based on the promotions they were planning to do with the delivery team, with the acquisitions team. So they often did not have sufficient inventory. But the symptom they will present is we need to have a better reservation system. So when a customer orders something, we get it. Or they would ask for things like we need to have a certain quantity that's only available for this promotion or blah blah. And no, you just need to talk better and plan for better inventory. So when you start a promotion, you have enough to cover all the extra demand you're gonna have. So that's a more of a communication issue, more of a planning issue rather than a promotion issue. And there are many other examples like that. So the report thing is a very similar thing. So a customer will be asking sometimes for a report where they don't necessarily need to print something. They need to a report means I need to see data so I can make decisions. That's basically what a report is. So it's a good idea to analyze, okay, what are you doing? What's the context in which you need to make this decision? And is there maybe, something else we can do, or is there some maybe advanced notification or whatever? Because a report usually is based on data that exists in the system. There are some forecasting reports, but the majority of reports we build show you the current situation and what's going on. And then there are sometimes advanced notifications or warnings or even a different kind of report we can build to allow you, instead of reacting to a situation you find out, to see beforehand that, okay, there is a situation that can happen in the near future, so maybe I can preventively work on it. So instead of just having a customer saying, okay, I need a report, and immediately thinking, how do I build that report? Doing a proper analysis, investigating, okay, what are you actually trying to do? What's the reason you think you need a report? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Get to the root cause and then try to fix that rather than directly do what the customer is asking for. So a good initial thing is, okay, if they're asking for a report, let's try and figure out what do they actually need presented to them. And then I guess Eric's going to explain more about that.
And we can now present data in very many different ways without having to actually use a piece of paper. And one of the super cool things that has come to Business Central lately is the analysis mode of list views. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this is a list view, and if you see this checkbox, analyze, then you have it. If you don't
built-in
see it,
pivot,
it might
basically.
be because in feature management,
advanced analysis,
there is a feature that is here.
This one.
Feature preview, analysis mode, quickly analyze data directly in Business Central. It might not have been enabled for you.
So Quicken, if you guys are running, I think it came out in version 22.2, if I'm not mistaken, or 3. It could have been just the previous one. Yeah, I think it's 3, because right now 4 came out and it was in the last version. If you didn't enable this one, do that now. That's probably one of my favorite new features that came out, and there's literally no drawback, at least as far as I can see. It doesn't directly impact performance because it's something that you can enable, like switch the view mode on the pages, as I'm sure Eric will present in a second, and then you can easily switch it off. So it's not something that's gonna generate extra data by itself or anything like that, but it's really cool. So yeah, if you didn't enable it, do so now. And if you didn't show it to your customers, absolutely do that.
So you can go into the analysis view and enable it. Small asterisks next to that. That means that it is enabled for everybody on all pages that Microsoft right now find compatible with the concept. So there's no way for me as a developer, there's no way for you as the sysadmin to say, well, Peter is not allowed to use this, or we should not use it on this in this place, but we should use it on another place. That will come. I believe that's on the roadmap for BC version 23. So be aware that little asterisk that if potentially this can give you access to data that you might have filtered out in different ways, and you could potentially open up for data that somebody is not allowed to see.
That's actually a good point. I haven't done a full advanced test on that. What I did notice is that from a purely user point of view, the analysis will show you columns which you are able to show as columns in the page in the first place. That's something I should probably try and see if it allows you to show columns in the page which the normal personalization doesn't let you show for some reason, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm pretty sure that if you handled your user permissions properly, that should not be an issue by itself. But it's a good thing to investigate.
By using this function. Anyway, that warning aside, when it is enabled, this is what you get. So right now I'm here on my general ledger entries, and well, I can open the chart of account, but I can't really do that much. But if I turn on the analysis mode here, at first glance, nothing has changed. Right, this just, when we get a nice alternating gray background, and columns are slightly different. We do get the option of on the fly moving stuff around. That's nice, but we can do that with personalization also. So that is not really an advantage. The first huge thing here, and people might not think about this until I mention it, is that this one will tell you how many rows there are in the view you see. So I cannot count the amount of time I've seen somebody, they set up a filter of something, and then they click open in Excel. They open the Excel sheet, they go to the last row and figure out, oh, there's 7,000 records here, because they needed to count how many there were in a
Yeah, this was an eye-opener. You wouldn't believe how many times customers have asked me to add this simple counter in various pages, usually in journal pages. Like I let's say I import a bank statement and they want to know what's the total number of rows and actually what's the total amount on all of them. Something simple you can do in Excel. So this is a great thing. Or, something as simple as, okay, how many customers do I have at any given point? And there was no easy way to do that other than saying, okay, export to Excel and just see the count. So now it's just one click away.
In list view, I have, kid you not, considered, well, not anymore, but considered adding a super simple app to App Source. The only thing it will do, it will give you the option of telling how many there are in a view, how many records there are in whatever view you're in.
And by the way, let me just navigate away. I'm pretty sure something he's not showing here is, so let me go to item ledger entries, for example. So if we open the analysis here, yeah, you see you have total number of rows and you have a filter here as well. So if I apply a filter and say I just want the purchase transactions, yeah, it's just showing the same thing. Okay, that's fine. I was thinking that, yeah, I remember there's a third field on here. I just wasn't sure which one it is. So let's go back.
Because so often that's either, or Eric, can you add a how many lines are there or stuff like that, customization all the time. But now we get it. So that is, that's the first super cool report thing, because that might just be a report. Yeah, we need to know how many items we have over $100 in unit price. You set the filter and then you open Excel to count the records. Not anymore. You set the filter, you hit analyze. But when I'm talking about filters, there are two filters in place here. So there's the filter we have on the page that determines how many records get into this view. And right now there's limitation, hard limitation set by Microsoft that we will only work with 100,000 rows or less. So if you want to use this and you have millions of records, then this is not the tool. Then you still need to go to Power BI or something else.
Or at least apply a good filter.
As long as you're under 100,000 records, this tool will work. But as I said, we're not, apart from the count, which is a big deal, we're just seeing the same data again. So what is actually special in here? Well, the special in here are these two boxes on this side. The first one is an extra set of filters, which is, well, when you're working in here and you already got the data, then you can filter without having to get them from the database again, because now they're sitting in the browser basically. So they're sitting in memory, all these lines, so you can go and filter here.
I think this is based on which the filter
weird
will
thing is
show a different number.
You cannot do a classic filter. You cannot do a Business Central filter. So this is slightly different. Like in range, you don't do dot one date, another day you type 2 dates and you select in range. So this is slightly different. But so these filters are more working on top of the filters you get over here. So bear that in mind. So these filters are just working on the in-memory data set you have. The other one, that's the, and I think I need to, let's, so there's something else behind the scene here. Let's actually make it so we can see.
Interesting, he doesn't see the third counter.
Studio there we go. Okay, so in here there are 3 things.
Interesting. I wonder if that's something that came up with version 13.23.4. Is it possible? Because he doesn't have this option here. What I was thinking earlier, and yeah, because I remember seeing this. I don't know why it doesn't show for him. Maybe could it be different types of views per page? Anyway, so what I was thinking here is, yeah, okay, that's what it means. Yeah, so if I say purchase entries, now you see that the total rows are 675, but based on this filter I've applied here through the analysis filter, I'm now only analyzing 251 of them, or rather seeing 251 of them. So this filter here, using the classic filter you apply to a page, will pre-filter the results. Think of it as this filter will be if you filtered some entries and then you want to do a pivot table based on them in Excel, but you create a pivot table in a new page by copy pasting only the filtered results and then analyzing them. So that would be applying a filter here. So if you had like 1,000 rows in Excel file and you apply a filter and you get only 200 of them, and then you copy them to a new page and then you apply a pivot table on those 200, that's what this does. This filter here is basically applying a filter in a pivot table. So you still have the total 200 rows, but now based on the filter, the calculations in the pivot table will be based on only, let's say, 50 of them, or in my case, out of 675 in the total pivot analysis, now I'm calculating amounts based on 251 of them. So that's basically the main difference. Let's see if he explains it the same way, but I'm kind of curious why he doesn't see this in his page. That's a little bit weird.
First, there's a list of columns. So let's say that we really don't need the general posting type. You can get rid of columns in here. Or maybe we don't care about the balance account type and so on. Similar to personalization, but it's per report. And when I say per report, it's actually, you can see that we have a report over here called analysis 1. And let's rename that to demo 12. So I can create another one. So I can have multiple reports or views sitting, and they are saved to me on this page. In PC version 2023, there's an option actually to share them with other users. So you can select the columns.
That's something, a little bit of a side note. It's something I've always had as thing in the back of my head. You know, one of the nicest things they introduced with the modern web client for Business Central is the ability to, you know, apply whatever filter you want and then save it. And then that view can be reused. But it's also quite frustrating that I don't get to share it with other users. So considering how much combining technologies there's been in the last years, and it's in a sense always been Microsoft's end goal to have one huge product that's just made up of these small modules. I think they're kind of getting there slowly. That's something that's been part of the CRM solution for ages. I can create a filter and then share it with other users. So I fully expect this to happen in the near future. Hopefully it will be applicable here as well. So it would kind of be nice, right? You know, I come up with a cool filter and then I just click share and then it's applied to other users as well. I don't know if Eric will touch on this, but just to mention, I did do a quick test how many of these analyses I can create, because I was thinking, okay, maybe it's kind of like the analysis columns in, let's say, analysis by dimensions or things like that, where you have like 36 or something like that. We got to, I think, 60, and there didn't seem to be any limit. So right now I got to 70. So it tends to, I'm sure there is some kind of a limit eventually, but it's fine up to at least 60 pages. And the whole idea is for each of them you can have a different filter applied, different groupings of columns. So yeah, as the name implies, it's a kind of a different, unique report you're creating, which is extremely cool. So back to Eric.
And you can see that the columns are all the ones that are actually on the page, even though they might not be shown. So currently, we only see amount, also on the normal page, but we do have debit amount and credit amount because they are on the page. They're just not visible. So your starting data set is all the columns that are there, whether they're visible or not. Going back to the
or most of them,
the warning that if you have hidden stuff because people weren't supposed to see it, they can see it here. But what we can do is that we can take a field, and in this case, let me take the GL account number, and then
by the way, I'm not convinced that's 100% correct, because when I get to the columns, first of all, I haven't modified this one, so you can see not all of them are made visible. but I have the shortcut dimension entry number. These are definitely not all of the columns which are available in the page. So right now, what I'm playing with are all the columns which were visible from beforehand. So um, let's see how we can do that. So for example, I don't see anywhere here the source fields, like have the source number, source type where you can see the customer, vendor, and so on. I don't have them visible here. So let's quickly go back to the normal view. If you personalize and you add the source number, for example, and source type, and then you go to analyze, you can see that they are added here now as possible columns. So they are not shown by default because I added them after the analysis was open the first time, but they were not there before. So that will be true for any other column. So for example, here you also don't see the lot numbers. So through personalization, you can add extra. So at least that was my experience so far. And so any field you can normally add in the page can be added here as well. But you need to add it in the not analysis view. At least I don't know of. Can you add it directly to the columns? I haven't tried this. No, okay, so you can open personalization, but you can only actually use it when it's here in the regular view page. But any column you add, so let's add the job number, job task number, for example, and we certainly didn't have lot numbers. So if you add those in the normal view and then you go to analyze, and then you have all of them. So I do believe that if through some kind of a well, customization will be at this point, you have hidden some fields for a certain user, they will most probably stay hidden here as well. But that would assume that you have removed the personalization option from that user to manually add columns as well. So if the user is able to add any column to the regular page view, then yes, absolutely they will be able to add it here. But what I have not tried is I haven't specifically tried to obscure the data. So I think what maybe Eric is talking about is we have historically made some customizations where, for example, the cost amount would show just asterisks for some users in the regular view to hide cost. So, maybe warehouse employees don't need to know the cost of products, or sales guys don't need to know whatever. There's weird businesses around the world. So while I cannot guarantee is, and I don't have a database like that in front of me, I cannot guarantee that if in the regular view you see asterisks for costs, once you go to analysis, it is possible that here you will see the actual values. That's something that you guys will have to investigate. So I think that's probably what he's talking about. But as far as which columns are visible, you certainly don't get extra columns here. You get only the columns as options which were already available in the regular view. And through personalization, you can add more, but that means you already allowed this user to add them for themselves anyway. So you're safe on this count.
Drag it down to row groups. And now you can see.
That's where the magic
And let's
starts. You're
actually get rid
basically
of
building a pivot table.
some of these. No, let's ignore that right now. So now you can see that now we get, this is what on this account. So we suddenly have a fold in, fold out scenario. I could grab posting date also. Put this down here. So now we have two levels.
By the way, just as a side note, because I made this correction and it sounds like I know more than Eric. Just the fact is he knows way more than I do. But what I really like about his channel, and he doesn't know who I am, we have no affiliation in any way, but he makes it so effortless the way he presents anything he does. That it looks like he has rehearsed and researched this whole topic, and it took a colleague of mine to make me pay attention to the fact that I believe a large portion of his videos are just him finding out about a new feature and just sitting in front of the camera and kind of researching it together with us in real time, or at least playing with it for 15 minutes and then recording the video. So Oh yeah, now this appears here for him as well. That's strange. But anyway, so I guess um, it's just not rehearsed. That's the only reason he didn't mention this, and I'm just adding stuff just because he's more or less improvising, the same as what I'm doing right here right now. But I did have a little bit more time to play with this feature, so I in no way attempt to show any version of superiority on anything. Yeah, we're on a different level. Like he's a MVP, and I can only wish I know as much as he does. But I just wanted to point out, just notice how effortless he does this. So if you didn't know that he missed something, it looks like this is a perfectly rehearsed thing. And as I started, he's just so charismatic. It's such a fun and such a pleasure watching his videos.
Uh, what I hope at some point Microsoft will do is that they can create an abstraction so we can get, whenever it's a date field, we can get it like month periods on some. But in this case, you see now we get on this date we have one entry and then a subtotal, and this we have one. Probably on this.
By the way, I don't know exactly what I think he just disregarded because he added the posting date, but you can clearly see that you do have posting date year, posting date quarter, posting date month. So the abstractions are already there. I think he was just not paying attention. So you already have that. So let me just go back to my view. If we go here, I can add. So if you add the posting date as a column, as a grouping in this case, then you clearly have all the dates. But instead, you can leave it here, but you can also add the year, and I'll add it as a top level. And then, as you can see, you have the years, and then we can have the quarters, and then we'll add the months. So all of those are already there, which is really cool. And you have the individual dates. So yeah, it's a really cool thing Microsoft did here. It's just amazing.
Two there, and so on. So now we're building a fold info route interactive report, and we can see that in this case it's saying that we're gonna sum the amount field, and we're gonna sum debit and credit. And since we're not showing debit and credit, we can just get rid of them, and we're still just doing a sum here. We can also turn this into pivot mode.
That's where the actual
now
magic
it
happens.
actually, you can see that we just get the sum and the account, and we can go and look, and so different view, nicer view, the pivot view. So really depends on how you want to view this. What you cannot do right now is that there is no export to Excel as a pivot.
I love it that he mentioned this. Again, I just watched the first minute and a half, so this is the first time I see the whole video. I love it that he mentions this because the first time I saw this feature, I had a colleague in my team present it. We have this weekly thing where a member of the team presents a new feature to the rest of the team, so the whole team is motivated to learn new stuff. But that was my first reaction. Oh, where is the export to Excel button? And then we started brainstorming, like, okay, but why would I need to export this to Excel? Normally you do this to create the pivot table and then do the analysis, but now you have the analysis here. So why would I export? In this specific case, I think the export would be nice in the sense that if I create a nice analysis like this, I would then need to share it with other people. And considering the fact that there is no way to save this and then present it to another user unless we have a team score or something, or I do a screenshot. If I want somebody else to interact with this data, having the ability to export to Excel would actually be kind of nice. But yeah, I love it that that's the first reaction for everyone.
View in Excel, that would be cool, but I did not see that on the announcements of what's coming next. But very often, when no, going back to, I need a report. What folks actually need are exactly this. So sometimes now the answer is you already have it. click on analysis, select this field and that field, and you're good.
Yep.
And your customer says, "Oh, perfect. That's exactly what I need." In other cases, what you might need to do is that you might need to create a list view of the data and populate it with the right columns and so on. And then give that list view to the client and say, "Here you go. All you need to do is click analyze."
Which, by the way, is something we do very often in the company I work for. We again, historically we used to create reports with a print preview or print on paper or whatever. And in the last maybe 8 to 10 years, and that was an initiative started from our developers, to be honest. But we've embraced it more and more often. Once we know what the customer wants to do, we just build a page which is sometimes dynamically generated, so it's not always necessarily a view of data which exists in BC. Sometimes it's data that we calculate dynamically. But instead of calculating and then exporting it to Excel or on a print preview, we would create a page where the data is in the page, which then gives you the other bonus of being able to interact with it, click, drill down, and so on. So more and more a report actually means dynamic analysis, and I'll say a little bit more about this later.
And you can find all your numbers. So I think this is amazing. I use it myself so much now in Hogarth.com. You create a view so I see how many apps are sold where and how and so on, and basically fulfill all my reporting requirement. And maybe I'm lucky that I have not yet sold 100,000 apps. We'll cross that bridge at some point, I hope, and then I guess that's a good problem to have. But so far, I can do anything. I can get all the views I need out of this, just because at some point I created a table that hold all information on what was purchased and when and how and subscription, all that information, and then I just goof around in this, and when I have a good one, I save it, and then I select if I need to look at numbers, I go in and select the right view, and I'm done. So I need a report. Well, maybe you don't need a report. You need to get data presented to you. And sure, in some cases, people truly need something printed out on paper. But most cases these days, no. That's actually, you don't need a report. You need your data presented to you in a way where you can look at it and it makes sense. And I think this is a great way to do it. And I hope you do too. Let me know in the comments below if you still spend all your time actually creating paper reports for your clients, because they never find this an acceptable solution. And when you're done doing your comments, you can check this video out for more AL hacking. Go check it out. It's a good one.
Yeah. So, as I said, he's quite charismatic, quite interesting to see what he has to say on the topic. I can just say I agree 100% with everything that was just presented. Not a lot I can add there. There is a few more things I wanna add, which are expanding a little bit more on this, and I should really create some kind of a better visual presentation. But right now you just hear it in words and maybe a little bit of a demo. So the more and more I've been doing trainings in the past several years, I started finding out I need some kind of classification when I talk about reports, precisely because of what Eric just presented. Because when customers ask for a report, they do actually want to have a way of having data presented to them so they can make decisions based on that data. That's the core of what a report is. The only reason why I would need a report is because I have questions and I want those questions asked. and the data has to be presented in a way to answer my questions. And this is where BI comes into play, because 9 out of 10 times when I get the answer to my initial question, then I have follow-up questions, and this is where having the ability to drill down or just see alternative presentations of the same data becomes really important. But because a report now does not mean a piece of paper or a print preview or an export to Excel, it means data presented in some form or way. I've started creating in my head, and I don't remember having heard it anywhere. If you know of somebody else who actually uses this classification, please let me know so I can, finally find out where I stole this from. But honestly, I don't remember hearing it or seeing it presented this way. So in my mind, that's my unique one. But long story short, I've created this 3-layer with a bonus 4th layer categorization of what reports are in Business Central, and you can theoretically apply this to any ERP. But for me, because I work with Business Central, I've built it for Business Central. So level 1 reporting is what I would call essentially understanding where the data is. For example, if you know what item ledger entries are, how they're generated, and so on and so forth, then you know that once you get to the item ledger entries, you can create reports, right? So you can export the data in Excel and then do pivot tables, or you can take advantage of those filters I mentioned earlier. So when I do trainings, I explain to customers that, for example, if you need to have a way to understand, for example, the total amount of sales you did for a day, well, you can simply, or for a week or for a month, you can say, okay, let's filter the item ledger entries by entry type sale. And then if you want to see the sales for the last month, for example, you can say T minus 1M, and that's a quick formula which will give you exactly 1 month before today. And then you can say ... which means show me all the sales which have been posted a month ago until today. And in this case, I don't have that much data actually. Let's see what are the posting dates here. So it's okay, a little bit longer. So let's say T minus 1 year ... So this will give me everything since a year ago, right? So these are all the sales. And the nice thing is that once you and I can of course then save this and say, okay, year, month, or whatever. And the nice thing is that because here you're applying a formula, that means that today the filter is show me all the sales from the 4th of September 22 until whatever today is. But if I open this tomorrow, then this will be the 5th of September last year, and so on and so forth. So it's a dynamic filter. And then of course I need to just click export to Excel and then do a quick sum, and then I have the total sales quantity, sales amount, cost, and so on. And you can do a lot of things this way. I've shown customers how you can do the same thing and say, okay, show me all the entries where remaining quantity is non-zero, for example, right? So everything that's in the warehouse. And then I can say where the expiration date is today plus 1 month, for example. And until that date, right? So this basically means show me all the entries which are available today. So all the warehouse inventory where the expiration date is a date which is going to expire in the next month. It's either already expired or is going to expire in the next month. So if you do this often enough, you shouldn't have anything expired. But of course, you could have said show me the expired items, so it would basically mean until today, right? So that's expired items or items that are going to expire today. So that's a very quick report that I can create, right? So next time I just open here and this is all my inventory, and then I can create a promotion or whatever. So those are reports, right? Normally you'd have to build a report. Of course, we know that if you go to the item list, or you can open a report with expiring items, but that report does not show you the lot number that's going to expire, does not show you the specific cost of the items, anything like that. So, well, you have a detailed report here. Sure, you have an extra step where you have to click export, but that's something that's very easily done. And Combining this with the analysis tool, now you get the total, so you don't have to create the pivots. So this is what I would call a level 1 report. Basically knowing where the data is and kind of just applying a bunch of filters, and then worst case exporting to Excel, or now that we have the analysis tool, just opening the analysis. And the nice thing is that these are based on the raw data, so they can be as detailed as you need to. The downside is you can only build them based on one table, unless of course you export a couple of tables into Excel and then build something complex, which you can absolutely do, but then it's a little bit more work. But so that's it. Level 1 reporting is the most flexible one because you can get any data you want, so long as you know where it is, what it means, how the system works. So it's the most flexible, but it also requires the most amount of work. Level 2 reporting is what we classically think about when we talk about reports. So those will be all the predefined reports you get in the system. So for example, once you get to the customer cart and you click reports, and you get all of these 9 reports: customer item sales, customer top 10 list, and all of these. That's essentially reports, which you have a bunch of options to filter what data is presented in the report. Depending on the report, some of them have advanced options. So if we go to the finance reports, for example, and you got the aged accounts receivable, you can decide to play with how big is a period, show it as a date interval or number of days. These are, the report is predefined. The specific columns are there, but you can decide, depending on the report, how exactly they're presented. So you have a little bit of flexibility, but it's mostly predefined report, and you're just playing with the filtered just to decide which data set is applied to the report so they can see the result. So level 2, biggest benefit, it's the fastest and easiest thing to run a report here. Biggest downside is you have the least amount of flexibility. There you go. So all of the out of the box reports, these will be level 2 reports. Where it gets really interesting is level 3, and that's where you have a little bit of a mixture between level 2 and level 1, and that's all the analysis reports. So if you think about the finance reports in the what used to be called the account schedules, or the analysis by dimensions, or the sales analysis reports, or purchase analysis reports, and so on. So these are reports where you literally build the report yourself. So you build the row definitions, you build the column definitions, you tell the system, okay, I want the row to be called this and have this text, and I want the data to come from here. And then for the columns, you set up, exactly how many columns, how to be calculated, and so on. So you have a lot more flexibility than level 2 reporting, but at the price of having a little bit more initial upfront effort to build the report. Having said that, you do have the advantage over level 1 reporting that once you build the report, then you can easily reuse it, and you probably don't have to export it every time. And there is also some smart features like predefined column layouts and so on and so forth. So so it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's both flexible and still automatic. But it has an even bigger advantage than level 2 reporting, and that's the fact that you get a drill down functionality, which you kind of get by default in level 1 reporting, but there the problem is arriving at the summarization. Here you get this by default, but you can also drill down and just see exactly what you want to see. In this case, no data, so okay, wrong report, but you get the idea. You can drill down and you can see exactly where these amounts come from, what are the entries, and so on and so forth. So that will be level 3 reporting, and I usually like to add here a bonus level 4, and that will be applying a BI solution. And obviously the best example here will be the Power BI reports, which you can integrate with Business Central. By the way, I don't know about you guys, I find that showing a BI dashboard here is not that useful. I find that pretty much for any report I have here, I would want to click the expand button and see it in full screen. And by the time I do that, I might as well just have a bookmark shortcut here and open it on a separate tab in my browser and then play with the full Power BI. I don't know what you think. I'll be interested to hear your feedback here in the comments. But yeah, that's basically where level 4 reporting is. Then okay, let's bring all of the information from Business Central, put it in a BI solution, and then maybe combining it with data that's outside of Business Central as well. But yeah, that's my classification. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it. I should probably visualize it and formalize it in some way, but I find it's a very good way to explain to customers what options you have in reports and capabilities in the system. And that's it for today's video. I hope you liked it. I'm always looking forward to your comments and feedback, and see you in the next one. I'm Sami.